We know from our polling that taxes is the top issue, but so is crime.
One final thing about Jersey. There is a strong tradition of last-minute decision makers.
I think the broader implication of a Mamdani win, I think all but guarantees an unsuccessful administration in addressing affordability.
It's Monday morning, bright and early, and this is another edition of Real Polling in Real Time with Zogby. And I'm John Zogby, and as always, I am with my son and managing partner, Jeremy Zogby. How are you doing today?
Hey, good morning, Dad. I'm doing fine. You?
I'm doing well. So we had an election a year ago, and a lot has happened in the last year. And we have an election coming up very soon. Voters are going to be voting, and in the odd number year after the presidential election, the political world anyway, focuses on New Jersey and Virginia. And those are bellwethers, and they have proven to be bellwethers in the past. So I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about Virginia and New Jersey. Of course, the very big election in New York City. And then you have some fresh polling data that you've extracted about changes and realignments among various demographic groups. And we'll kind of end on that. But the principal topic for the day right now are these three major elections. So let's start, first of all, with Virginia. You know, Virginia shocked the world 4 years ago, went from a Biden, and a good, solid Biden victory in 2020. But by 2021, Virginia, which had moved from a purple state to a pretty solidly blue state, went red, big time red with the election of Glenn Youngkins. I remember that education and the culture wars and even Board of Education, were principal issues, and that suburban moms had swung to the right. But here we are 4 years after that. We have a Republican president, who I might add won handsomely in 2024. But Virginia, while a single-digit race, is showing a fairly strong trend in the gubernatorial race towards the Democrat. Spanbarger, Representative Spanbarger, has, I don't know if you want to say commanding lead, but a steady lead of 5 to 7 points against the lieutenant governor, who is a conservative Republican. And so what's going on in Virginia? I think it's about inflation. I think it's about Donald Trump. I think it's about a typical history of Virginia oftentimes liking to reject whoever is in the White House and making a name for itself doing that. We've seen the polls fluctuate in the gubernatorial race a little bit. We have a whole separate issue in the attorney general race, where a Republican now looks to be leading. But I'm going to suggest that it's looking to me like a Democratic victory. Not a big one, but a Democratic victory in Virginia. And I will just leave Virginia by alerting the many folks that listen and watch this, that on election night, take a look at the early results that come in, and what you will see reliably is a buildup of a huge Democratic margin. That's because the Northern Virginia suburbs, which are growing and liberal and have helped turn Virginia blue in many instances, their votes come in first. And then slowly trickling in through the evening, you get the central Western Virginia, rural, more traditionally Southern vote coming in, and then the race it becomes evened out. Look for that early margin, and if it is a very substantial Democratic margin, you're probably looking early at a Democratic victory. If the race is tighter coming in from those suburbs first, then look for that rural area to possibly make this a much tighter race in Virginia. Any thoughts?
Well, I want to hear New Jersey.
Boy, New Jersey's a good one. New Jersey's always a good one. I've been polling New Jersey not quite since I was wearing bell bottoms, but I've had a long history there.
Phasing out of bell bottoms.
But so what you have is Mickey Sherrill, Congresswoman, former military, Annapolis, Navy, running against Jack Ciattarelli, who actually ran last time against the incumbent Phil Murphy and kind of surprised the world, I guess you could say. That was Ciattarelli lost, but it was only by 3 points, much closer than folks anticipated. A few comments about that. Again, you've got a bifurcated state. So you're going to get the early votes coming in the northeast urban corner, one city after another: Hoboken, Jersey City, Union City, then over to Patterson. Those are heavily Democratic. And that should give Mickey Sherrill, a substantial margin. But then later on in the evening, you're going to see the Jersey Shore and southern rural New Jersey. We're talking Vineland and that area. You're going to see that vote coming in, and we'll have clues. The early Democratic margin and then tightening up. Now, both candidates have made some dumb mistakes. Mickey Sherrill has been accused by the Republicans of having been involved, having information on a cheating scandal. She wasn't cheating, but she had information on those who were cheating at Annapolis. The Republicans thought that they were going to make hay out of this, except that somehow the Republicans were responsible for releasing what was supposed to be sealed documents, and it kind of backfired. But in a strictly New Jerseyan sort of way, what happened is that Mickey Sherrill was in an Italian neighborhood in New Jersey, and somebody handed her some meatballs and said, "These are authentic Italian meatballs. They include 3 meats, veal, beef, and pork." And she said, "Ooh, pork. Who would put pork in meatballs?" Well, the New York Post, of course, got a good ride on that one, and we've got to see that race is tightening up a little bit. Ciattarelli, for his part, was introduced at a rally by his chief Muslim advisor, unpaid advisor, and the Muslim guy went on to talk some serious anti-Semitic talk, and then introduced the Republican nominee, and the Republican nominee made no effort to repudiate or distance himself from those comments. And in the closing days, in what could be a tight race, these are the sorts of things that can tip the scale. One final thing about Jersey. There is a strong tradition of last minute decision makers. I guess because the campaigns are so negative that people genuinely don't know if they're even going to bother voting. But there usually you see some swings taking place. That's why a lot of other pollsters have gotten New Jersey wrong over the years, because they didn't continue polling. They stopped a week before or 3 or 4 days before. Right now, we're looking at a lead that that the Democrat has, again, of anywhere from 5 to 7 points. I suspect that we may very well be looking at a tighter race again, but I do believe we're probably looking at another Democratic victory. And then I'll wind up with New York. Or do you want to save that one?
Yeah, let's save that one.
Go ahead.
My only comment about Virginia is, and I haven't looked at the numbers in a while, but in 2016, Trump won Virginia pretty handsomely because of the independent vote. Went, very much in favor of Donald Trump. Swung towards Biden in 2020. I think it was 11 or 12 points.
Yes.
That Biden had won them. Because I think COVID had a lot to do with that. And then within really the first 100 days of the Biden administration, you started to see that swing away. First and foremost, driven by the first wave of inflation that hit Americans in 2021. And then that intensified, and you're absolutely right. Virginia, and particularly Loudoun County, was the main theater of the culture wars, and parents showing up at the board and the FBI. And then, the independents swung away from Biden by as much as they went towards him. So there was a massive collapse. And to your point, that's one of the mechanisms behind that swing back and forth. And it could very well play itself out again, but I don't know. But with New Jersey, the thing that I want to say, virtually every poll has Cheryl ahead. Trafalgar is the only poll that I saw that came out last week that showed it tighten to a 1 point lead. But, hey, look, Trafalgar got it right in 2016. They were one of the few that did. But it's one of those organizations that almost always is either going to have the Republican ahead or very close. And we know from our polling that taxes is the top issue, but so is crime. Okay? And when we ask who handles better or who is expected to handle better, of course, no surprise that most voters would say Chitterelli, but surprisingly, most voters, more voters, noticeably more, said that Cheryl would handle taxes better. She was expected to handle taxes better. And I think that there's something very interesting in that result, because by and large, taxes tends to be something Republicans are perceived as handling better by the average voter. So that tells me right now that Cheryl has the momentum, but we're going to go into the field. And we did it 3 weeks ago, and we're going to follow up in a couple or a few days and really just see what's happened. What are you thinking about New York City? I mean, I have some thoughts. as to the broader implications of that. But where were you headed with that?
Well, it's hard to see Zoran Mamdani losing. Now, not that that's impossible. It certainly isn't. But he has some distinct advantages. He's riding a high double-digit lead. Anywhere from 15 to 20 points and holding. Secondly, with Eric Adams dropping out of the race and endorsing Cuomo, that has not had a major impact in the Cuomo column at all. Thirdly, not only is Mamdani good on his feet and addressing issues that really matter to New Yorkers, but he has the benefit of now running against Andrew Cuomo, controversial and perhaps burned out, and Curtis Sliwa, controversial and perhaps burned out. So we don't always get to pick our enemies, our opponents, but he picked some good opponents to be running against. But I think what's happened here is that the opposition to Mamdani has congealed around the issue of Israel and around the issue of anti-Semitism. And that does not appear to be resonating with voters. That's not to say that New York is anti-Semitic or that New York is anti-Israel. It is to say that people care about inflation more. They care about the affordability of rents, affordability of food, availability of transportation, issues that Mamdani has stuck with, has not veered from, has not compromised on. And I think in that sense, plus some natural charisma, that you're seeing him not slip in the polls at all. The bigger issue, I believe, is his question of his ability to turn a winning voting coalition into a winning governing coalition. And remember, what they say about him is true. He's never really run anything except a campaign. He's never been the manager, the administrator of really anything. He's been a junior backbencher assemblyman. And the forces that are running against him in this campaign are going to continue to be holding his feet to the fire or worse, should he be inaugurated mayor.
Yeah. Well, there's a parallel to the rise of Obama.
Mm-hmm.
An electrical figure, utilizing the digital politics. Obama revolutionized digital politics. Mamdani has now revolutionized digital politics. The thing about Israel and anti-Semitism, Mamdani has shot to fame so quickly because of his front and center addressing affordability, getting out of control in New York. The New York voters don't expect Mamdani to really do anything about anti-Semitism or Israel. I mean, he's the mayor of New York. Of course, New York is the seat of the United Nations, but that's not on the mind of New York City voters.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to do with Israel and anti-Semitism. I'm saying in the broader picture.
Yeah.
It's a city that's falling apart, and it's a charismatic young man who has the appearance of what progressives want. This is an international man, a very charming person, not a person of color, and very electrifying. But the broader implications of this election, and what everybody is asking, is what happens to the Democratic Party, assuming he's elected. And I go back to a comment that James Carville made early on in the Trump administration. I think especially when the DNC voted in David Hogg to lead the executive level of the party, and Carville said, something like this is tantamount to a split in the party. You're going to have the urbanist party, the socialist party, and so I don't know if that's I don't think that is necessarily going to happen. I think the broader implication of a Mamdani win, I think, all but guarantees an unsuccessful mayor, an unsuccessful administration in addressing affordability, because the kind of things that Mamdani is proposing, I don't think are really going to work. I don't think they're going to address the chaos that is going on in New York City. It's only going to exacerbate it. So if you agree with that, and I think that's very true, then what happens to the Democratic Party? Do they lose momentum going into the midterms? Do they lose momentum going into 2028? I may be looking too far ahead, but I just don't see how a city that has spiraled out of control in terms of the cost of living and the crime is all that's going to be addressed with, more or less sophomoric takes on the issues. I don't think there's really much of a successful model anywhere in this country for successfully implementing those kind of policies at the city level. So that's what the bigger picture is what happens to the Democrats. Do they go into a national freefall? Does the party split? How do they come back?
Too soon to tell. You said something all of what you said was very interesting, but going back to one of the earlier points that you made, you talked about Barack Obama. And Barack Obama, it was his time, it was his electricity, and what he did was he raised expectations to significant levels, so much so that within a year and a half, the one word most associated with Barack Obama and his early presidency was disappointment. The fact that he'd raised expectations to a point where no one could possibly have succeeded with that kind of agenda. Now, he had the full force of his party behind him, the full force of his movement, and it was, a movement and a vision. In Mamdani's case, it remains to be seen whether he can turn his charisma from heading a movement to heading a government. Yeah. And once he becomes the head of state and the chief administrator of New York, you've got Wall Street, you've got real estate, you've got ethnic groups, you've got so many people who are going to be arrayed against him, and establishment arrayed against him. And no predictions there, except to say, boy, will he have his work cut out for him.
Yeah, and the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And scratching the surface just by talking about the Port Authority and transportation. There is a bureaucracy in New York that, wow.
Yeah. Let's leave it at wow.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about some polling results the next time we're together in New Jersey. And so, okay. Have a good few days until then.
Yeah, have a good week.